Anuta is a 5-year-old company. We are a global company with headquarters in Bay Area. And our key differentiator when it comes to orchestration is that we are a model-driven platform that works for multi-vendor infrastructure. We support more than 35 leading vendor platforms and 100 plus different individual device versions. We support both physical, virtual, as well as SDN infrastructure. The customers are going through a transition. Many of them have hybrid infrastructure. Some of them are still in the legacy infrastructure, but many are doing a trial on the NFV. And of course, some advanced customers and MSPs are looking at SDN as an opportunity to cut down their operating expenses. Anuta builds on top of this existing infrastructure and provides a transition path to the upcoming infrastructure. So we provide technology agnostic layer to the business. This is a very busy slide, as I mentioned, but it captures all the use cases where Anuta's NCX has already been deployed. You see here on the enterprise side, we support multiple use cases such as remote branch offices, virtual CPE, and on the service provider side, whether it's MPLS backbone network, public cloud integration, or the service provider's enterprise network itself. And we have developed the Yang models, service models for all these use cases. Today, we will focus on one simple use case, the virtual data center. But the same solution works with the entire span of the infrastructure, whether it's campus, branch, data center, cloud, as well as public cloud. Here is a detailed diagram of NCX. Everything in blue, the light blue color is NCX in the middle of the diagram. NCX, as you see here, it looks like white here, but the one in the middle, the orchestration platform, it sits on top of the physical or virtual infrastructure. We have developed device models using either CLI, NetConf, or SNMP, as well as REST API for 35 different industry-leading vendors. On the east side, we integrate with existing enterprise software. We integrate with license management, image management, IP address management, as well as service assurance and analytics platforms. NCX also can integrate with other VNF managers, such as VMware's vCenter or OpenStack as well. On the northbound, NCX has a comprehensive REST API. It integrates with OSS, BSS, as well as OpenStack. NCX has Yang models for various different services that I just described. Apart from in provisioning the services initially, NCX is constantly monitoring the infrastructure. If someone goes and manually changes the CLI, NCX is going to reconciliate and undo any changes. Or if it's a really required change, it will take up that policy into its database. So going forward, it will be part of the master database. NCX also helps with auditing as well as any workflows that enterprises and service providers have. This is a detailed slide on Yang. As I said, this is critical to our success in the POC. As you see here, we have decoupled the service layer from the device layer. All the business logic, the service intent, is explained in Yang. It can be easily customized or extended by the partners as well as customers. The business logic is typically written in Python or Java, so you can reuse that across various customer deployments. At the bottom, we have the device adapters. If the device automatically supports NetConf, then the integration is quite smooth. But if it doesn't have Yang or NetConf, we still have developed the concrete mappings that map the business intent to the actual CLI or NetConf or APIs. So as you can see, it supports both existing infrastructure as well as upcoming infrastructure, as long as it supports CLI, NetConf, Yang, or APIs. So let's focus on the POC itself. It's a tier 1 service provider, and they looked at NFV as an opportunity to reduce operating expenses as well as introduce business agility. And they're specifically looking at virtual data center as their first POC. And they insisted on multi-vendor functionality. They want the flexibility to rip and replace or switch one vendor with another vendor. And of course, multi-tenancy is very important to them because it's a managed services solution. And the entire solution has to be able to support multi-tenant infrastructure, whether it's the firewalls, load balancers, as well as the NCX software itself has to cater to multiple tenants. And the remaining requirements such as extensibility, scalability, and integration with OSS, BSS that usually you find in every POC. When we started working on it, as you go through the details, the biggest challenge is the integration aspect. There are so many different vendors, each with their own APIs, each with their own workflows, and we were able to integrate 5 different vendors to deliver this NFV. And of course, the performance and scalability, it is still work in progress, but that's another important factor. Finally, it's not just about deploying the service one time. You have to think of the operational challenges too. Like, how can I keep on adding services, updating the services? Because the end customer is expecting something similar to AWS. So the service provider is competing with very large-scale public cloud providers, and self-service and operational agility is very important to them. So what is the solution? As you can see, we partnered with HP here, and this is the famous NFV mono architecture. Anuta Networks provided the orchestrator as well as VNF manager, and HP provided the NFVI. They provided the virtual routers, the Helion OpenStack version, and they also provided the SDN controller. It's called HPE DCN, which is a OEM of the Nuage VSP. And finally, Logical has done the system integration. They integrated F5 LTM, checkpoint firewalls, and Fortinet virtual firewalls. So it's a combination of multiple vendors and multiple partners coming together to deploy a NFV use case, which is virtual data center. So as you can see, the extensibility becomes critical to the success of this project. You need a platform that can support multiple vendors, multiple use cases, and it has to be done rapidly. So how does all these solutions fit together? I'll walk you through one workflow, for example. As you see, the service provider already has a unified orchestrator that does compute, storage, and networking is done by Anuta's NCX. Anuta NCX provides orchestration and VNF lifecycle manager, and it works with the NFVI. The NFVI can be multi-vendor too, OpenStack, as well as VMware's vCenter. That's running all the virtual machines. The virtual appliances like HP's VRS, the virtual switch, as well as the SDN controller, which is from Nuage. And whenever required, our NCX communicates with the element management, such as the F5's Big IQ platform, Fortinet's FortiManager, as well as Checkpoint API. So let's look into detail as well. So this is a bit complex flow. I have all these slides on the web. You can download them as well. But the main point is, first, user communicates with NCX. He wants to onboard a tenant. You want a network provision for the tenant. So what NCX does is it will first communicate with the SDN controller, the Nuage SDN controller here. It sets up the tenant, sets up all the L2 to L3 network for that SDN controller. Once that setup is done, it's now communicating with the OpenStack, the Helion OpenStack. Helion OpenStack will communicate with the element managers, and it will spin up the actual VNFs, whether it's the virtual switch or the virtual router or virtual firewall or virtual load balancer. And finally, NCX communicates to the EMS, the element manager, to configure day-to-day policies. So once this setup is up and running, that's when you use NCX GUI. NCX, now that it has abstracted all the physical and virtual layers, it provides you a simple drag and drop GUI. You can say, I want a 3-tier architecture, and there is a layer 3 termination point with 3 different segments, and I need a perimeter firewall, and the SDN controller is giving me all the L2, L3 fabric. Like that, you can drag and drop and say, this is how my network service should look like. And you can customize this further. You can say that firewall, because he's paying a lot of money, this should be a physical firewall. Or if you say, I want this to have high availability, you can customize that. So you can also customize the packet path too. And all of this will be done using Yang modeling. Customers and partners can extend this Yang model to match the kind of service path that they want to enable. So we have done this kind of work with Logicalis support for this customer. And within 3 weeks, we were able to stand up this whole infrastructure. And once it is deployed, you introduce self-service. So you can say, now I would like to add another VIP, another real server. I want to change the firewall rules. I want to create NAT rules. I want to add some zones. All those things can be done from the NCX GUI. The customer doesn't need to know the checkpoint UI or the Fortinet firewall UI. They just configure everything on the NCX GUI, and NCX will do the translation to the underlying infrastructure. Now, as part of this service, if they say, no, I need this to be a virtual firewall, NCX will automatically spin up that virtual firewall. It will communicate with OpenStack and say, now let's spin up that virtual firewall and start provisioning services after that. So what were the results? This is, as I said, is a POC. So it's all about proving that all these integration points work as per the customer deployment. And as I said, Yang is the main reason behind our success in this POC. And we think going forward, this level of separation from service and the device is going to be the reason to succeed in NFV world. And as I said, we have out-of-the-box support for 35 different vendors, and that helped us a lot. And it helped with initial deployment as well as ongoing support as well, because we have all the technology partnerships with these leading industry vendors. Because when you're trying to deploy, you obviously run into issues, API problems, incompatibilities, all of those things. So that's why a good community model where you're partnering with all these leading vendors really helps when you are under a POC timeframe. And currently, we are working to verify the scale across these multiple vendor deployments. The go live or production is expected to be January of next year. So what is the key lesson? We see more and more orchestrator is becoming critical, because customers, they want to have choice. They want to have multi-vendor deployments. And they want extensibility so that they can customize it to their own deployments. And finally, they are moving beyond the initial provisioning. They want to be able to accelerate their operational issues using KPI-based metrics. So this is something key to going forward, where customer is looking at, okay, how can I look at the current operational statistics and then bring that back into the orchestrator and then provision the services accordingly. For example, one of the use cases that came up was, I know this sort of threat is happening in my system, but I can't have real-time telemetry information. But I can explain that threat in this context. I can say, first, I see this event happening, then I see these 3 events happening in rapid succession, and then this 4th event happens. So once you can describe this workflow, however complex it may be, you can bring all that business logic back into NCX, and you can define a Yang model for it. And obviously, you can have the corrective actions, such as adding a ACL or shutting down a port or redirecting traffic or spinning up new virtual firewalls. all of those things can be incorporated into the Yang model itself. So that's where we are taking this platform next. Apart from the initial provisioning, how do you simplify the operational day-to-day concerns for them as well? And finally, many thanks to Intel. They gave us the platform to support us as well as introduce us to all the partners. They gave us legitimacy when we were very early in the stage. So thank you to Intel Builders Program. There are a lot of supporting material. We recently did a podcast with packet pushers as well, so please check that out. And thank you. I'm open. Okay, there's one question.
Okay, so you support 35 different vendors, right? The biggest question for this kind of complex environment would be the global break-fix support, right? So you have Logicalis, HP, yourselves, and a couple other things. Who owns the problem when that happens? The SPs are trying to answer the challenge from the hyperscalers. Well, the hyperscaler, you go to one source. How do you handle that?
So the question is, which throat I get to choke? Well, I agree with you. Customers always are asking for that. So in this case, Logicalis is the first point of contact. They are owning the full solution. They are answerable to the SLAs. We are training them, but things have to be worked out. There's no doubt support is going to be the main challenge going forward, and we think Logicalis has the capabilities to handle that. I agree. That's going to be the main criteria as well.
So for interworking of these VNFs, I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
So for interworking of these VNFs, do you use something like NSH so that they talk to each other, and does it work off the box?
So the question is, do you use any protocol like NSH to do the service chaining? No, that is in our roadmap, but as of now, we use the service chaining within Yang model itself. You can describe the service logic using the Yang model. We have out of the box for many of these service chains, so you're not starting from scratch, but you can augment it with all the business logic that's needed for this customer. So we are not using NSH. It's on our roadmap. Thank you.
I appreciate it.